Hey folks, it's Sam, and I'm here with Casey Scott, and we're going to be talking about Rahu, Mars in Taurus, explosiveness, and some of the issues that we've been seeing. We're going to do some great case studies of the recent transits and alignments of Mars and Rahu, so check it out. So, folks, as you can see, I'm here with Casey Scott, excellent astrologer. He's doing great work on his own. He graduated from my school a few years ago and then has really taken to doing some great research. We have one of Casey's great diagrams, famous diagrams here. We're going to be going through this excellent diagram that he put together. Look at these remarkable case studies that he's done. He's gone back for many years, almost a couple decades, and he's going to be taking us through Rahu-Mars conjunctions and alignments. One thing that I did also want to let people know of, though, because as you know, I do have a lot of free classes. I did a full examination of the nodes in the Taurus and Scorpio axis. I just put the link in the comments where you can, if you click on that, it's a free web class, nodes in Taurus and Scorpio from September 2020 to March of 2022. So you're in it, folks. We're in it. We're in the nodes in this axis right now. And it's free. You just go to that web class, click this, you select a date and time, either watch an instant replay or just register for it and see how this will work. Of course, part of it is how it works for you, based on your ascendant. Like, for example, I'm Gemini, so I have it Rahu going through my 12th, Ketu going through my 6th. Casey's Scorpio, he's got Ketu going through his 1st, Rahu going through his 7th. So it's different for each person. And in this class, I did a lot of stuff. I talked about this in a historical context as well, this transit. I also talked about as the nodes go through each of the nakshatras, and also some other things, some remedies, and a whole lot more. So again, that's for free. You can just check it out. But so I put the link in the comment field. So back to this, though, Casey, thanks for coming here. Welcome. And first, why don't you take us through what you put together here and start us off with, Rahu and Mars and the conjunctions and whatnot.
Thanks for having me on today, Sam. It's really, I wanted to see what was the reality of this situation, because, people see this Rahu, Mars, and hear about this explosiveness and sensationalization. I just wanted to kind of take myself through it the way that I've been trained to do it, and that's just take every component of it and kind of see what it means as a classical evaluation. And then I wanted to go back through some of the historical, because it's not something that never happens. It happens you can see every 22 months, and just see kind of the flavor of it in historical sense. And then I know from that, how to kind of get the themes and to kind of know what to expect. So this is a diagram I put together back in February before Mars changed signs, right? Because like you said, I'm a Scorpio, so I'm always paying attention to where Mars goes. It's my ruling planet. And so when it went into Taurus, I knew it was headed for Rahu. And so the way I evaluate it is just, well, what's Rahu, what's Mars, what happens when those two things come together, right? So Rahu is one of the lunar nodes, right? So what that means, what the lunar nodes means, is that the Earth is going around the sun on this plane, and then the moon is going around the Earth on a very similar plane, but tilted just a little bit. Right. And so when you tilt it just a little bit, what you end up with is a place where the moon crosses the ecliptic going south of the equator, and where it crosses the ecliptic going north of the equator. So you have a north node and a south node. So Rahu is the north node, the ascending node, where it's going above the ecliptic plane. And so the interpretation of this node is like the past deprivation of our soul, where we felt like we didn't get something in the past, and so we have a lot of fascination and attachment and this feeling of lack that kind of amplifies our desire. But because it is a shadow planet, right, there's no light to it, right? And if you think about what light means. It's when you turn on the lights, you can see, you have consciousness, and you can move around. But when you take the light away, it represents our unconsciousness. So Rahu is this part of ourselves that really operates on the unconscious level. It's when we're engaged in Rahu pursuit, it's like we feel like we're along for the ride, you know. So there's this, can't quite put our finger on what's happening, and it's just kind of pulling us along this deep feeling of restlessness, right? So we have that going on. And then the second thing is Mars, right? So we want to know what Mars is to know what's going to happen. And so Mars represents this simplistic animal instinct, right? It's this black or white, yes or no. And it's this feeling of separation and independence, like a small child who's just learning how to walk on their own and talk on their own, and they have this a little bit of a innocent rebellion to them. And so, you know, my favorite word for really what we want to embody in Mars, our own internal Mars, is this lovable disobedience, right? Kind of like a dog that's off the leash, where we want to just explore and do that thing, and it's but that innocent energy, right? And so we can interpret it as anger, right? That's what Mars is, that part of us that is angry and frustrated. And so just on a practical level, it's the part of us that has this idea, like we had this idea to do the interview, and Mars is the part of us that actually hit the button to play and do the interview. It's like we have to actually take things out of our mind and put it into action. And so Mars is this, our capacity to kind of reach up into our mind and execute, right? It's the enter button on our keyboard. And so when you combine these two energies, you have this part of us that's trying to reach up and bring it into physical with this unconscious, confusing energy. So what it does is really amplify that frustration, right? And we don't really know why we're frustrated. We're just feeling that rush, that feeling of in a hurry, right? I don't know if other people are feeling that in the back of their minds too, is this, I got to get it done. This hurry, right? That's operating on not necessarily a conscious level, but we feel it through that Mars part of ourselves. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's just to say, yeah, that, and there was a few, we were even talking about a few charts. It was like Michael Jordan has this. Who were some of the other Mars Rahu? I don't remember off the top of my head. There was a few.
Rudy Giuliani has it, yeah. And then also George Carlin, that comedian, and he was kind of that edgy, angry old man, you know, that was pretty funny to listen to.
And so, you know, in a general sense, the Mars Rahu, it brings quite an impulsive nature, of course. And what the nodes do is they exacerbate the sort of instinctive nature of the planets in a general sense, even as it relates to things like the sexuality of the planet, like the fact that Mars is a masculine planet. When it gets near one of the nodes, that's one of the main things that gets really, exacerbated. And so the quality to take action suddenly without a filter, and Rahu is kind of like without a filter. It's kind of like the unfiltered part of it. And this is why, among other things, but because what you talked about was a very nuanced interpretation for sure, that, again, when it's in someone's natal chart, it can be a very explosive kind of wild energy, but then we learn how to focus it and how to concentrate it. And it obviously, when it's embodied in a human being, it becomes a force that we deal with and we integrate through discipline and other kinds of things. But what we can see when we analyze these events, which is what you're now doing a lot of, is we really see when we analyze events a kind of instinctive quality that comes out in these sorts of conjunctions. And so we'll see something like volcanoes and eruptions and social eruptions and this kind of expression, because society's like a mirror, which is one of the reasons why I even look at why I look at mundane events, because you're going to see the things play out. And in fact, Mars was just in Aries for all of that time. We saw, previously we saw a lot of social unrest and stuff. And I even said at the time, when it goes into Taurus, we're going to see some of that calm down, which we have. Especially, we've seen a lot of things stabilize, particularly around like some of the cultural things, particularly, in the U.S. when we had Mars going through Aries, we had insurrections and all kinds of stuff going on. A lot of that part of it has calmed down, but we can still see these flashpoints. And particularly as we see Mars and Rahu get closer, we've seen culturally in the last couple weeks in the U.S. a couple mass killings that are just horrible to look at, terrible. We've seen an eruption in Iceland, that volcano, which hadn't erupted in about 6,000 years or something, right?
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that I, didn't mention, but we have to also consider what sign they're coming into conjunction in, right? So, like you said, Mars came out of Aries, which is that fire sign, masculine, and Mars is that Rahu Mars conjunction, and a chart can show that really alpha male energy, where the feeling of like win at all costs, right? That was the trademark of Michael Jordan, right? Is that he would get super motivated and take any perceived slight to kind of give him that angry energy, to give him that edge to play at his highest level, as when he was pissed off, right? And so in Taurus, what happens is that, like I said, that energy is stabilized. It's a fixed earth sign ruled by Venus, right? So I always think of like grandma's house when I'm thinking of putting a planet in a sign. I'm thinking about, you take Mars, this warrior, and you put him down at grandma's table and with a plate of pancakes, right? And so he's, hungry and he'll eat it, but it's just not his natural state of affairs, right? And so Rahu also kind of has that grounded energy. And that's why instantly I was thinking of volcanoes, right? Because you're taking this fiery Mars Rahu energy and you're putting in the fixed earth, right? So it's like you're putting fire in the earth. And so with that capacity to explode, I was thinking volcano, right? And so we saw a lot of the earthquakes, and then consequently the eruptions that happened because of all that earth moving and shifting, right?
Yeah, and Tyler pointed out, and hi Tyler, thanks for being here. He also pointed out, which of course Mars is the son of Bhudevi, which is the earth, and it's the fire, because at the center of the earth, at the earth's core, is magma, it's lava. This is why, again, this is a very powerful fact, scientific fact, and also you get Mars exalted in the earth sign of where the fire is contained in the earth, exalted in Capricorn, that cardinal earth. So again, Mars has a very distinct relationship with the earth in that regard.
Exactly. And then just going back through, like I said, it happens every 21 months. So I wanted to look back at the most recent one, right? And that was in June of 2019. And I kind of wanted to look on a month of either side, because if you're focused too hard on one thing, you might miss the real trend.
Yeah.
Right? And so this was when Trump was visiting like North Korea and the UK, and there were a lot of protests going on in Hong Kong, right? This is the year before COVID happened, and that summer there was a lot of like protests and unrest happening.
Right.
And the big thing that's kind of understated was the Gulf of Oman incident, the tensions between Iran and the US and also the UK. There was this, really things were escalating pretty hardcore at that time, and it wasn't as overstated as it could have been, maybe should have been, is how close we were to like really getting into a war there.
Right. Yeah, I definitely remember that time, and that was in Gemini, correct? Yeah.
Yes, it was in Gemini, right?
Let me. By the way, I did want to look, and I wanted to check before I misspoke. Whoops. Let me pull this up. This was Casey talking about this the last time. Mercury in Gemini. It was Punarvasu Nakshatra. Trump visits the Queen in UK. Hong Kong protest riots, Gulf of Oman incident with the drone. But it's also when we have the volcano erupting in Indonesia.
Correct. Yeah.
And it's great on this, the way you have natural disasters and whatnot broken out into a separate little category down here. You have the social things up here, and then you have the physical sort of calamities or whatnot down here: earthquakes in China, Japan, volcano erupts in Indonesia.
Yeah.
And so this is just a great chart that Casey put up. So he does these a lot. And I asked you, I don't remember when it was, to talk about this. It was another time, and you were like, I'm not sure, maybe wait and see. But I figure now I pull you in here.
Yeah.
But I did want to also, because I doubled back and looked while we were talking, and I was pretty sure of this, but I wanted to double check. Michael Jordan has the Rahu Mars, and it's debilitated Mars.
Yeah, it's in Cancer, right?
In Cancer,
yeah.
Yeah, and so, I want to just say, because he's such a renowned figure, that he, one of the things, it's kind of become a meme, kind of a joke now. I don't know if you saw this, it was a really great special, because I remember Jordan in real time. I remember the life before Michael Jordan, and then his run and all that. So even just as a cultural figure, whether you're a basketball fan or not, he was iconic. And I also remember his acceptance speech. And while he was playing, he was very, be like Mike. I could be like Mike, is like smiling and very approachable. But he was a savage, man. He was a savage competitor. And since he retired, more has come out about his personality and how hard he was on his teammates. And it wasn't be like Mike, like, oh, Mike, friendly, smiling, good basketball player. He was brutal to his teammates, and not in a bad way, but just like win at all costs and hard. And he would push them and torment them literally to get the best out of them.
Yeah.
And hardly no one liked him on his team, but they were glad he was there because he made them winners. But
exactly.
One of the things was that he said, if you want to see a personification of this, watch his Hall of Fame speech. He cries in it a couple times because he's very moved. But he regurgitates every grievance back to high school, back to college, everything. And usually these Hall of Fame speeches, there's olive branches, and it's like, whatever controversy they may have had, it's all, he didn't forget any of it. He talks about, the high school coach that didn't believe in him. He talks about his first coach, Doug Collins, who did this, the owner, Jerry Reinsdorf, I think it was, who benched him, and this for Isaiah Thomas, and then freezing him out in the All-Star. He hasn't forgotten anything. He talked about all of it and brought it all up. And he said it was just another log in the fire. It became personal. This is what made it personal. And he keeps saying this language over and over again. And so there was a series on, I guess it was HBO or what is it, the sports channel? I don't remember what it's called.
Yeah, I watched that special. That was like a 5-part series or something like that.
It was fascinating just for its cultural references, but also now there's a meme where it's like, it became personal. That's when it became personal. It became everything. He remembers everything, and it all was personal. You said this to me. Oh, that's when it became personal. I saw what was his name? It was the coach of the Seattle Supersonics when they were playing in the finals or something, and Jordan was in a restaurant in the
George Karl.
George Karl, that's his name, yeah. And he didn't say hi to him, and Michael's like, "You're going to say hi to me?" Then it became personal. Just looking for an excuse to have it be personal. And now I'm going to kill you because. So this is a Rahu Mars, debilitated Mars. And again, you can say, well, why is it debilitated? It made him a winner. It made him a winner because of this utterly thin-skinned, like, okay, maybe it made him a winner, but it certainly didn't make him happy. It certainly didn't help him evolve Mars beyond just personal grievance, And so, again, we can look at things, and that doesn't mean you can't be successful with it, that it can't lead to success, but it also just shows what it shows, that we're not here to just win trophies.
Exactly.
And even in his crowning moment, when he's being elected to the Hall of Fame, and every basketball player is saying, Michael, you were the best. It's like, it still wasn't enough. It's like, dude, you won. You're the best. In a room where everyone is claiming to be the best, of jocks, they all say you're the best. And you still have to bring all this up. So anyway, I just want to bring him because he's such a case study in the Rahu Mars and also of the debilitated Rahu.
Yeah, exactly. And usually when you see that thin skin easily angered, it also makes you easily controlled, right?
Yeah.
But that Rahu just amplified it to the point where you can't control him, right? He's so out of control that you just had to sit back and watch as he did these spectacular things, right? With physical fitness and endurance and all that. The classic Mars brought out to its highest point through that Rahu, right? And it all came from this feeling of I hate to lose, right? I hate to lose, and I hate to be pointed out by people, and I take that personally, right? So it ended up elevating that part of it, but it came from that debilitated type of energy, right?
It's a catalyst for it could be a catalyst for anything. I mean, this is why you got to look at yogas and dashas and all that. But yeah, absolutely. He's such a great personification of it. So because he's so public and it's so obvious and all of that, like that's when it became personal. Like people just joking with him. Like he talks about the Brian Russell of Utah. This is a famous example when he went off to play baseball, and he just went over to he just went over to the Utah Jazz training camp. They were shooting around and he just showed up. Hey, let's play. Hey, let's play. And this guy, Brian Russell, was probably just joking with him. And he said something like, if you ever get on the court again, I'm going to show you a thing or two. He's probably just joking around. It's like, oh, he's like, and he was like saying, Brian Russell, how you feel now? It's like, dude, he's probably just joking around. It's like, It became personal. And that last shot that he made, the last moment of his career before he retired the second time, when the Bills won the 1998, I think Bulls, that iconic, majestic pull-up jumper to win, it was on Brian Russell, and he was like, I'm going to go right to you. He's like, okay, here it is.
Yeah,
but it was just a log on that fire. That's what he kept saying in the Hall of Fame speech. Go watch it. That was just one more log on that fire. It kept burning. Like, dude, you won. Not only are you in the Hall of Fame, but all these Hall of Famers say you're the best there's ever been. And still you got to come in here and kind of rub it in everybody's face. Because that was the part that was kind of distasteful about it. I mean, he was pretty widely criticized for that speech because he was just bringing up all these old wounds, criticizing management, Isaiah controversies. It's like, dude, what do you want? You won. Anyway.
Yeah, and so both Rahu and Mars are separative energies, right? And it's happening in an environment that's about gathering and enjoying and being content, right? So it's got that conflicting energy to it, right? So Rahu is separative in that it's like, I got to go in that direction. I'm not listening to anybody. I got to listen to my own internal unconscious. And Mars is separative in that, like, I've got to do this and I can't accommodate at this time. I've got to move forward. And, because that's what action is at the end of the day, is that you take infinity and you eliminate the rest of infinity to do the one action, right? So that's kind of what Mars is the destruction of the rest of infinity, except the one thing that you do.
The selection to align your actions. And again, that's absolutely right. And on a quantum level, as you know, Casey, we've talked a lot about the quantum principles in Vedic astrology. I did a whole thing on quantum Vedic astrology. Is that out of the infinite possibilities, what's called the wave, quantum energy is like a wave, and our intention and our attention and our focus collapses the wave into a particle. And now instead of infinite possibility, it becomes a particle. And even on the quantum level, particles behave like waves. This is what the quantum enigma is about. Again, you even see something like this. Casey and I emailed him very suddenly yesterday and said, hey, you want to do this today? And it's like, there was infinite things that we could have been doing within our parameters of what we could be doing. But I had the idea. I asked if you want to do it. Yes. Okay, boom. And that then collapses the infinite possibilities of what this moment could have held from yesterday's point of view. He could have been anywhere and would certainly be doing something different. But now it's something, and it's very specific now. It's this point in time, this moment, these actions, everything, the infinite possibilities get collapsed into a moment. And Mars is really the kind of razor's edge of that, where those things co-inspire, because it's our discipline to do, not just do something, but do what we know is right, to make us strong, to make us powerful. This is what, Jordan, this is what's underneath all of that. You know, it's a challenge to, oh, you're saying I'm weak? Oh, I remember this. Now I'm going to be strong. Got to be strong.
Right.
So it can make you hyper disciplined. There's one thing for sure, is debilitated Mars can make a person hyper disciplined and also pretty upset. Well, they have a hard time with the, you know, with the balance of it. But anyway.
Yeah. And the event wise, you know, I wanted to take that energy that we just evaluated, and I, in my own life, designed things to be pretty like moment to moment rather than trying to make big plans or do anything. I wanted to, you know, I arranged my month to be that I could take an instant and be like, okay, let's do it. We'll do the show. And like, for example, going into this, I was feeling a little frustrated because I wasn't meditating. And so I kind of got off track, and kids were home, dogs around and all that, trying to find the moment to do it. And so what I ended up doing right as Mars went into Taurus is I found 12 minutes of my day where I could make, that was the magic number. As instead of trying to do it for half an hour or an hour, what I was doing, I was like, I can do it for 12 minutes, right? So that's, it brings it down to just this instant actionable thing. And what ends up happening is at the end of that 12 minutes, I can usually extend it a little bit longer, but it was like, just bring it down into something right now that I could do. And it doesn't feel like I've got to gear myself up to do it. Just make it something instant that you can act on right now. Mm-hmm. So that was my advice to myself, and probably to everyone else, is just to chunk it down into something. You know, if you're wanting to start a new lifestyle, just start with a 5-minute walk and then see where that takes you. Start with just a juice and see where that takes you, rather than trying to make this big plan of what I'm going to do with my life. Just make it one step and take that action, and then take the next action.
Yeah, and so we see the reason I you know, went off a little bit on this public figure, you know, Michael Jordan, and the sort of psychology behind that sort of impulsive frustration that could, you know, spill out, is because, again, you know, Casey's put together, you know, this amazing diagram, which he's going to take us through in a little more depth here, to just show that there's this impulsive quality to it, for sure. And again, that's one part of it. Again, the other part of it is that when it's properly channeled on a personal level, you know, it's focusing and concentrating all of that toward a very courageous divine purpose. Because again, that's ultimately what's underneath it all. Person's natal Mars and whatnot shows the potentiality, and any kind of thing to exacerbate the energy can also exacerbate and activate its full power in you. But it's interesting to analyze the external results as well. Because again, you can have a volcano exploding outside, or you can have your Kundalini awaken and it's like a volcano. It's a volcano as well, because you break through the Brahma Granthi at this seat of the Kundalini, and it's like a volcano exploding in your consciousness, which it's a good volcano. You better, one day you need that volcanic eruption to happen to blast you out of your mundane ignorance, to say it just bluntly in Sam fashion. So, but it's interesting to really look at these mundane details as well. Casey, you want to take us through some of that?
And then to just add to that, on the other end of the spectrum, it's like when we don't have healthy expressions for our frustration and anger, it's this volcanic activity of our repressed grievances that we've been holding on to. And then all of a sudden that last thing happens, and blah, it wasn't just about that thing. It was all the things that we've been storing up, you know? Yeah.
And that's the sort of Michael Jordan example of, and, you know, hanging on to it, even in a moment where he could be gracious and be like, and laugh about it. And see, that was the thing. He wasn't laughing about any of it. It was like, it was all new. He was, get that look on his face. He was like literally bringing up the old statements. He's like, well, you got, I think his name was Jerry Krause. Jerry Krause says, you know, organizations win championships, but I don't think that. It's players win championships. It's players out there who are have 105-degree flu but taking on the blue, and he's just cycling through this stuff. It's like, dude, it was decades ago now. Let some of it go, man. Why are you bringing and naming people, naming and shaming? Like, you see, he hasn't moved past any of it. All the greats, and they talk about freezing me out in the All-Star game. Isaiah Thomas and whatnot. But whether they did it or not, I don't really know. But all I know is one more log on that fire. It made me determined to come back. It's like, here you are naming and shaming people, man. Chill out tonight, just tonight. You can go back and say it tomorrow. So again, it was just kind of like, wow, all right. So
and I think that's just the Rahu factor of it's unconscious. He doesn't even know.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very emotional because for him it's Cancer, but it's also the emotional. It's so emotional for him. Like, anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just what you see with the intelligence of Mars is like, if it were for say opposite that in Capricorn, it would be like, oh, the reason why is I couldn't handle my own emotions. And that's what I have to really work on is me saying it's not their fault for making it that way. It's me having this wild response to really something that's not personal.
Right? It might not even been true, but again, in his mind, it was an emotion. It was, he had a feeling that it couldn't have been real. Like I said, Brian Russell might've been joking around, but to him, it was this, he was very emotional about this. Mars becomes very emotional, not very practical. Like, oh, are you making fun of me? And again, when it's exalted in Capricorn's ruled by Saturn, which is also very much about what? The past.
Yeah, the past.
Time. Letting go of it, man. Why are you still you have to be emotionally triggered to still get excited and angry about something that happened 2 decades ago. Like, you're just not letting go of the past. Your relationship to time is screwed up here. Why? Mm-hmm. And just as angry, and you see it come over his face, just as angry now. He's like, he's living it in real time, because that's what Cancer is as well. The emotions bring us into real time. This is why Jupiter's exalted there, because in real time, emotionally, we could be gracious. We have a choice. So Jupiter exalted in Cancer means our emotions can be very gracious. Mars is like, in the moment, those emotions come, and there's all that frustration still there.
Yeah. So last time I was talking about last time this happened, it was that Trump was visiting these foreign places and was buddy with North Korea, and there were earthquakes in China and Japan, volcano erupt. And then before that, the time before that was, funny enough, I was looking at this again today, and it was in 2017, there was another deal with North Korea where he took the opposite stance and said, if you guys don't quit firing weapons, you'll see fire and fury like the world has never seen. That's what he said in 2017, Trump did. Do you remember that, when he was like, fire and fury like the world has never seen?
Wow.
And so this was also a time that there was a big earthquake in China and Mexico. And another big key word that I kept seeing throughout was the flood, right? And the Rahu nakshatra of Ardra is the flood, right? And so this was when Hurricane Harvey just like parked on Houston and dumped all this water and just flooded the whole Houston area. That was a terrible event there.
But this was also the time, one of the big events as well. This was in Leo. This was when we had that Unite the Right rally in Virginia as well, where the white supremacists came for that big rally, right? And then the protests, and Heather Heyer was killed and all, right?
Yeah, and just like we talked about with Rahu Mars, it's this needing somebody to blame, right? And that's kind of the seat of what all that Unite the Right was, that this is to blame for why we are having this situation, right? So it's just someone to blame. Like Rahu externalizes it, it blows it out of you, and so Mars and Rahu is like, that's the person. I've got to confront this person. I've got to have a conflict with this person because they're to blame for why this is happening.
And remember that think of the iconic image of that. The iconic images of those, of literally white supremacists carrying tiki torches saying,
Tiki
Jews
torches.
will not replace us. Torches with the fiery torches and like shocking. Like, is this America? Like those iconic images were happening in a Mars Rahu time, right?
Yes.
The Unite the Right rally. Again, and you can remember after that the press conferences and whatnot as well, when good people on both sides and those kinds of things were being said. It was definitely a watershed moment. And with the previous president, this would have been in his ascendant nakshatra as well.
Mm-hmm.
We also, because he has Leo and very strong Magha person, so he was also having a Mars return at that time.
And Leo is all about that, and Magha especially is about having your tribe, right? Your tribe. It's all my people versus your people, right?
Your teachings, your gurus, your teachings. Yeah.
Right. You got two people on two sides of the river. I love this image. Is like my divine person and your savage person, like on the other side, right? So even though they're both the same on the principle level, because you've got this tribal mentality, it's the other one is evil and I'm the divine, right?
Yeah, and also even what happened in the Iraq Civil War. This was when the Iraq civilians liberated Mosul from ISIL, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Mm-hmm.
You also see that
the courageous part of it, yeah.
Yeah, the defending the homeland part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great. And then we had, as we go back even a little further, November 2015. Want to take us through these?
So yeah, in November 2015, there was the Beirut bombings, and then the big terror attacks in Paris. There was a series of them over a week, and that was a big deal there. And then the other thing I saw was plane crashes and bombs on planes in Paris and Turkey. And so that was a recurring thing on some of them too, is like the plane crashes, and that's like a fiery air thing, right? Because we talked about Rahu being this airy quality, and Mars being this fiery quality.
And these airplane, this was the one also in 2014. You have air signs, so this is why you see it. Mm-hmm. Look at how these, especially like the Earth sign. Now we have the volcano. Now we also had the volcano when Mercury was in Gemini here. But as
Gulf of Oman, just to bring that up, with the drone got shot down, right, out of the air.
Out of the air, yeah. But certainly we would think, yeah. So you had the drone shot down. That started the incident in with Iraq, right?
Mm-hmm.
With Iran.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this other one here that you have, we can remember back when the plane was shot down, the Ukrainian plane, or was shot down in the Ukraine, rather. Remember that newsworthy event?
Yeah, there was a couple of them right in a row too. They were right back to back, and so I do remember that. And
the terror attacks in Paris, is that when they drove the panel trucks in Nice?
I believe so. And there was one that I read that they had a bomb full of bolts, that like there was bolts in the bomb and it exploded and sent shrapnel all over everywhere. I remember that one being in Paris. Yeah.
Right. No, I was just trying to remember, but I'm sure this is correct. I'm just trying to remember the events, because now we're going back several more years, and it seems like 2015 was 100 years ago.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Seems like 2019. I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, there was the protest carrying tiki torches. Wasn't that like 50 years ago?
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to remember.
Yeah. So I wanted to go back, to all the way to the last time it happened in Taurus, right? Because we're not just having Rahu Mars, we're having Rahu Mars in Taurus, right? So the last time that happened was in May of 2002 at the bottom there. And so I wanted to kind of really hone in on that one to see what that one looked like. And that one, there was India and Pakistan were having a really tense relationship, and there was threats of nuclear war. And like, of all the times they were having this conflict already, and there was a meteor that came out of the sky and exploded in And there was a real tense moment there where it almost turned into like, is that a nuclear weapon? And they all had their finger on the button.
Oh,
And
wow.
that was a real tense moment. I was looking back at that. And this is, May 2002 is a few months after the 9/11, and we were in Afghanistan, and the whole war on terror, right, is happening at that point. And then also the Catholic Church sex abuse scandal was right at that time also.
It really started to explode then.
Yeah, that was when it really, they lost containment on it, and it was coming out in the public. And so there's this, because Taurus is about this protecting, and like I said, grandma's house, and so this innocence of children, I feel like, can be that catalyst for the big monster to come out and protect the children, right? So we've seen a lot in the recent events since I did this diagram of like in Nigeria, they've been kidnapping schoolgirls, and these, even another example would be like the Oprah interview with Harry and Meghan, where they're kind of acting, it was this, like I said, explosive accusation that they are.
That's a great example. No, that's a great example. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And royalty is related to Mars. That whole, it's one of the Kshatriya planets, and the war. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a good example. And then, right after Mars went into Taurus, that week of is when Biden approved the airstrike in Syria, which kind of like, after the dust settled on that, they're like, was due process figured out, or was that impulsive? So there was another one that they kind of held back on after the outrage of it actually happening. And then, like we said, the things that just happened in the last couple of weeks, the terrible shootings in Atlanta, which were racially driven also, and then the mass shooting in Boulder not too long ago here, a couple of days ago. So these were just classic cases of, repressed anger, and that explosion, like that action happened without a lot of thought, without a lot of planning, and maybe unconsciously driven, right?
Well, we can see that in both of these shooters. That you can even see the repressed sexual. At least this is what the Atlanta shooter said, that it was, this repressed sexuality, shame, guilt, shame around Asians. All this. I hate to even say this stuff because it's centering the shooter here. But I mean, this is the story that we're hearing, right? But that as an explosive catalyst, like you say, you see the Rahu Mars, and even those themes of Venus, like sexuality and the repressed sexuality as a term, or as an idea behind making the person explode. And this guy the other day was he was from, I think he was born in Syria, and his culture was Muslim, or his religion, and he said he was he was targeted and bullied because he was Muslim and all like that, and the frustration of that as a circumstance that led to his explosive behavior and frustration. I don't know how much that, again, I'm just saying this as a backdrop to solidify what you're saying, like this frustration,
right, and
sort of boiling up and explosion, like an explosiveness, like a volcanic, like an eruption that then comes out.
And like I was saying, what it's good for is to just shrink it down to one thing, right? And so the negative of it is like, all he had to do is grab the gun, right? That was just, it got reduced down to one thing, like just grab the gun and do the thing. But we can use that in a positive way, as far as like, I've got to get back on track with my health and my diet and all that stuff, and be like, just grab the juice, just go outside and walk and see what happens, right? Just reduce it down to one thing and take action on it. And then if you're doing it on a higher principle, Mars is happy, right? Because he feels good when he does good, right? And he continues to be frustrated when he either can't bring it down into an action, right? If it's just a vision board and there's no actionable steps, that's frustrating for this part of ourselves. And then also when we have this thing that we, maybe shouldn't do and we do, that's where it gets frustrated too, is I didn't do that thing that I know is right.
Because I didn't have the strength. And this is the thing. And again, it's a challenge. And when it's properly focused, like if your challenge is just settling personal grievances with people you think insulted you, that's not the highest challenge. Even if you win, it's an insatiable appetite, like with the Michael Jordan thing. Then you're still settling grievances because they weren't really resolved, because first of all, they weren't real. Right? It might not have been personal at all. There might have been a statement like organizations win championships, like some statement that might have been said to him, maybe even legitimately minimizing his contribution. But again, taking it, just blowing it out of proportion and hanging on to it for the rest of your life, there's no real strength in that. Mars is the authentic strength. And you can use things as a catalyst. I do it all the time. I see things where and again, Mars can use anger or frustration in a very positive way. I've talked to you all about this, some of my, students and other people. Mars gives that entrepreneurial spirit because you see something that's wrong and you want to fix it. You want to do better. And it's a catalyst for greatness. It doesn't mean that you have to destroy others and what others are doing. But you see something that needs to be fixed that's worth your time and energy. So now you have the courage to actually do it. And these are the great virtues of Mars, is it's in defense of something that's worth defending, not just winning some useless personality conflict. Yeah. That's the worst reason to be in battle, because now, like you said earlier, you're easily controlled. Okay, well now if I know what's going to piss you off, I can just make you dance on a string. Whenever I want you to be diverted, I'll just find the thing that upsets you, and now you're not a very formidable adversary anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
I can just find a thing that wastes all your energy and time and let you fight over that, or create a diversion so that you fight with your enemy while I take all the money, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, one of the things that you told me in our first reading together when we were still a new student teacher is, as a Scorpio, as a Mars ruled person, you told me, deal with the problem so that you're not the problem to deal with, right? And so I kind of like hung that one on my wall as like, deal with the problem so I'm not the problem to deal with. Because the more you kind of let that stew, the more it's just if you just deal with it, if you just do the thing and then you can let it go, then it's just done, right? And that's what Mars wants, is it to be done. Finish it. Just finish something. Right? Yeah,
and people that are ruled by Mars have that. They're going to see a battle, which is fine, because it's a good skill to be ready to show up in battle. There's a reason all the Indian epics are on battlefields, because we're kind of in a battle here. But it's just whether you're fighting the right battle or the wrong one. And so again, that the greatness of this Rahu Mars in general for all of us is, we're all primed. And by the way, I just wanted to say the conjunction is almost exact, like right now. As we're talking about, it's almost exact right now. And it's just very funny how these things happen, because I didn't plan, and none of this was planned. Very like seat of the pants. I'm just like, oh, yeah, okay. And very spontaneous. So I didn't plan that, okay, when it gets exact, I'm going to do this thing. No. But again, what Mars will do is, what it brings us into is that we have the courage to show up and not shrink from the battle, because life is going to be a battle against our virtues over our vices, or our evil, good over evil.
Yeah, 100%. And then, like I said, just reduce it down to one step, because that's how we really show up when the moment comes. It's just like when Michael Jordan, he was really good at that big moment, right? Because he was able to shrink it down to it's just one shot. Just take the shot, right?
It's a great analogy.
Yeah, just take the shot. Just do the one thing and quit making it bigger than it really is, right?
That's perfect analogy for the athlete. and they can control a lot of things. Even when you bring it down to the moment of, okay, each moment, okay, what can I do today? I'm going to work out. This moment, I'm doing this. And we're willing to suffer for our principles. Again, this is one of the big things with Mars, is in the moment. Am I willing to do what I know is right, even though it's hard, and I'm going to bring on some suffering if I know it's the right thing. And again, for Jordan, in alignment with his goals, the right thing was winning the championship. Mm-hmm. And that might include yelling at my teammates, having people not like me. But again, he also shrunk it down to like, and the big thing was, if you want to win, give me the ball.
Yeah, exactly.
Give me the ball. And everybody knew at some point, if you want to win the game, it's coming down to the end, just give Michael the ball. But Michael will win the game. So talk about shrinking it down to one thing, give me the ball. And he would get angry, like, why didn't you give me the ball? So they all knew at some point, I better give him the ball.
And, he did when he got the ball, he scored the points, right? And he did it in the big moments. And part of that was because he pushed so hard in practice so that, you're not taking the shot at 0 when you're fresh legs, you're done when you're so tired. So that's why you run so hard in practice and take the shot, because you're duplicating that moment of, everyone's on empty at that point, but you got to be the one that has one drop left in your gas tank. And so you do that by recreating that moment and being ready for that when it comes.
But even him as an athlete, and again, you can use these metaphors if you're not a basketball fan or whatever. You can still use the same metaphors. He was great earlier in his career as a great individual player. He was the best in the league, 5 or 6 years before he ever won a championship. But it didn't start winning championships until he started making his teammates better. And one of the greatest things that he did, again, was making all those teammates tougher in practice so that he could rely on them in the game. And I mean, he was right. I criticizing Michael Jordan is not, as a great, as literally the best basketball player, even the best teammate of all time. These are facts. It's more on the personal level to look, deeper than just the surface to see what he's going through. But as a matter of fact, like the greatest force of, athletic force maybe we've ever seen, he made all of his teammates better eventually because he made them tough enough. He knew he became strategic about it. And even though his Mars was debilitated, it was acting as if it was in Capricorn, which is, by the way, the premise of like the book that I have on the ascendants, is that whether the planet is in the exalted or the debilitated place or not, doesn't matter. You can understand the nature of each planet by examining its exaltation placement. So we can understand the highest nature of Mars by realizing it's exalted in Capricorn, where you become strategic about that energy.
Right. Yeah.
And not impulsive. So he became a great teammate by empowering all of his other teammates, Steve Kerr and some of these players that were, Paxson and some of those other guys.
And part of that, that Capricorn energy is being the example, right? Because you don't just preach about it in Sagittarius, but Capricorn's like, you actually walk the walk. And that's what really inspired them to do, is like, look what happens when you play this hard, you practice this hard. You're actually doing it, and he's actually getting better, and he's elevating everybody on the team by doing it, right? So that was.
So, want to wrap up, and what final things would you like to say, Casey? Because this is case study, and we start talking about this public figure, Michael Jordan, as an example of Mars Rahu, because we could see that energy, but we also can bring it down to these events that we also notice. And what else would you like to say here before we wrap up? We have a few minutes. I want to give you the floor.
Yeah, basically, when we talked about the spectrum of what explosive looks like, right? And that one action that we take, if we align it with something that's a higher principle, right? If we're know what's right for us and understand that this part of us that's frustrated right now is frustrated because we're not doing that thing that we should be doing, right? And so I've been on my Instagram, I've been talking about resistance and shoulding on ourselves, where instead of making it a should and that thing that we should be doing, just do something, just take action and do the thing that you've been saying you should do, right? Don't make it another thing on the list, right? Just find a place and time to actually take action, right? And so that's what it's good for, and being able to cultivate something from that action that's positive.
Yeah, and the explosive action, the explosiveness that we're seeing right now, as as these planets get closer and closer together, has definitely, again, it's been easily demonstrated with this Rahu Mars conjunction, and with the great case study that this fantastic handout wanted to take you through some of those examples where you can see how this explosive potential played out in many other ways at different times. I did want to just one more time encourage people, if you did want to get this free class on the nodes in Taurus and Scorpio, again, between now and March 2022, we're going to be dealing with this nodal axis. Again, you can just click that link, and again, you can just reserve your seat. Either you can watch an instant replay now or select a time. And again, it talks about how this nodal axis in Taurus and Scorpio will be playing out for you based on your rising sign. If you're Libra, this is happening in your second and eighth houses. Rahu in Taurus is in your eighth house, and Ketu in Scorpio is in your second house if you're Libra. If you're Leo, it's fourth and 10th house. So this is totally different, and whether you know it or not, you're living this right now. And this is always what astrology shows us, is that, and you're going to be dealing with this emphasis and these eclipses over the next, between now and March of next year. You're dealing with these eclipse cycles and the nodes vibrating here until that time. So whether you know it or not, you should understand what it means. So again, Casey, I wanted to thank you, for showing up here and taking us through this great diagram. It's been great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
Absolutely.